Good morning. I hate to do this, but some people always ask me about religion. Well, I don't have any, but if I had uh, a Bible, this would be it. Now, I don't agree with everything they say, but boy, if you want a pretty much independent group of assessment every week of every country in the world, uh, this is it. It's a little costly. It runs about $139 a year, but it is unbelievable the amount of information in here. They don't spend much time on precious metals, but when there's a movement or something, they usually have some article on it. But they give you the news, what's going on in the world. You don't get that from Time or Newsweek or any of that other crap. Uh, if you can afford it, by all means get it. If you can't afford it, make sure your library carries it and read it every week. Now, behind you, you see a thing that says oil. Back in 1971, I compiled this page for the University of Miami, which was, I must say, I must give a credit for 3 consecutive years that I was there. And no major fault of mine. They were the most outstanding collegiate paper in the country. They had a circulation of 17,000. They come out twice a week, and it wasn't Harvard or Berkeley or Yale or Princeton or Rutgers or any of those. This was the University of Miami, and they got the Pacemaker Award as the best collegiate newspaper 3 years running. So it's no small deal if anybody's been involved with college newspapers. This was a major news printing uh, information center here. I mean, it just kept the students appraised of everything, and I was happy to say that almost every issue I had something in there. I did a lot of editorial ratings, and I've compiled the first page in any collegiate newspaper in the country dedicated to nothing but environmental issues. And again, I say that didn't happen at Princeton or Yale or Berkeley or Stanford or any of those other places. It happened to the University of Miami, and where credit's due, you got to give it to them. But we're no better off, basically, than we were in 1971. I argued 41 years ago that we got to get the hell off of fossil fuels. It doesn't make any sense. They were ruling, dictating what was going on in the world. Whatever happened in the Middle East uh, happened to the world because they were so dependent, and more so then even than now, dependent on oil. And nothing aside from religion has gotten us into more trouble than than thinking that we have to and leave the defend the rights and right of ways for giant tankers. Now that's an illusion because these people are going to sell their oil regardless of who protects them. Why the hell should we spend uh, American treasure to protect the Straits of Malacca so that huge tankers can go from Saudi Arabia over to China? Let China protect their own damn oil. It's not our problem. Who the hell's going to steal all this oil? What are they going to do with it? No matter who has the oil, it doesn't mean a thing to them. You can't eat it, you can't drink it, you can't wear it. But it's a necessity. So it has to be sold and exchanged for some kind of money or gold or other products. So no matter who protects the people that produce oil, that oil is still going to be produced. And there's only so much of it being produced because of OPEC and other reasons that that the that the oil is going to be on the open market. Now, if we stopped our sanctions against Iran, price of oil would go down, but it wouldn't go down for long because they'd all get together and decide how to keep the oil. If you've seen the price of oil for the last couple of years, it varies between 90 and 105 bucks. So it's not uh, it's not by coincidence that that happens when production when the prices go up. Uh, I'm sorry, they attempted to knock them down. They cut back a little on production. There's always just so much in the pipeline to keep that in the 90 to $105 range. Now, there's two basic kinds of oil. Uh, West Texas Intermediate, which is a nice light sweet oil, and Brent, uh, North Atlantic oil. Now there's always an $8 or $9 or $10 difference in that, and the economist argues the difference is because of a presidential order back in the 70s that said we could no longer export oil. Now you say, why the hell would we be exporting oil? It's because the oil men in this country go want to see an open market. They don't want to lose that $8. You know, the West Texas Intermediate. That's the price of American oil, and everybody but the refiners, you know, want this on the international market, uh, so that they'll get the same as Brent. So it would cost everybody 10% more for their heating oil, 10% more for gasoline or kerosene or whatever. So there's a major fight. And you say, well, who's keeping it down? Well, because it would take a presidential order to allow American oil companies to export American oil. Now we still, even if we allowed it to be exported, all that would do is raise the price of American oil. Not that we were going to export any, you know, but it would raise the price of American oil $9 a barrel. Now, who doesn't want to see that go up in the economic community? Why, the refiners, because they're happy as hell to buy uh, oil at $8 or $9 a barrel cheaper. It doesn't cost them any more or less to refine Texas light intermediary than it does Brent sweet oil from the North Atlantic. So the refiners don't want it because if they started to export oil, they'd have to pay Texas people and North Dakota people the same price as the international price, and there would be only one international price. So why am I upset? And why what you call wants it? The Economist is recommending that they get the presidential order and they put this on the market, thinking that it's going to lower the price of oil. It's not really going to lower the price of oil. It's just going to make less oil available to ourselves. They're going to refine it, and if they can sell it on the open market, they'll find excuses. You'll see that the refineries, you say, well, there hasn't been a new refinery built in 10 years. Why is that? Because the big refineries are buying up little ones and closing them down. Why would they do that? Well, because that you'll notice in the spring they say, oh well, oil's going up because we have to close down for a while and stop making cracking fuel oil for to heat homes with, and we got to start cracking more oil for gasoline because the summer's coming on. Okay, well it's all a shell game, and it's allowed to go on because our government has always been in bed with big oil. So you say, well, why am I upset? Well, back in 1971 and before that, I wrote articles about how crazy it is to keep being dependent on fossil fuels. And here we are, 41 years later, and have done next to nothing. We put up a little wind, we've got some solar, but we only have that because there was such a giant tax break, and now that tax break is gone. You won't see the big solar farms going up like you did last year. We had a bunch of them around Vineland, and Vineland isn't that sunny a place, but they built them because there were so many tax breaks, and they get to charge much more for their electricity than they do from a coal-fired plant. Now, I'm not in favor of coal fire. I'm more in favor of gas fire, but I'm more in favor of no fire when it comes to fossil fuel. We are pumping them. We're going to, as long as somebody says there's one more field that hasn't been tapped, we are going to do nothing or next to nothing until we've used up every goddamn drop of this There is. You talk about leaving your grandchildren with the national debt. Well, you're going to leave your grandchildren with no electricity or very limited electricity or very expensive uh, oil, still oil powered automobiles until the last drop is gone, and then everybody will say, "Well, geez, that happened awful quick." Well, let me tell you how quick it's happening. When you take a usual oil field that that to, that uses pressure only to extract the oil, you get about a 6% drop a year in the amount of oil you get out of it. You take a fracking oil field and you lose 30 some percent a year. So you've got to keep fracking and fracking and fracking. Here's an interesting fact uh, out of this article. Let me see if I can find the one. Okay, um, let's see. The International Energy Agency reckons maintaining production at 1 million barrels per day in the BAKKE, and that's in South Dakota, requires 2,500 new wells a year. A large conventional field in southern Iraq needs just 60. All right, so 25 for a million barrels of oil a day, and these things fields this use is only depletes by 33% a year. That that the same amount of oil can be extracted without chemicals, without pressure, without fracking, by 60 wells as compared to 2,500. So what people in South Dakota are willing to do to pump out oil, and what people now are willing to do for fracking, uh, is their business. They can do what they want because under Cheney had a law written through that you cannot sue these people for environmental damage. So they can do whatever they want. But the point isn't what they're doing immediately. It's what's happening in the long run, and it's the fact that we are still so damn dependent on oil and on fossil fuel that we won't even think about making a really major lift to other means until we are down to our last drop, and your grandkids are going to wonder why they have to stay. They can't go on a summer vacation because there's nothing to put in their gas tanks or any other tanks. This is a crime against nature, and it's a crime in the long run against humanity. So don't, my recommendation, don't sign the presidential order allowing us to export oil, because we would be exporting oil and importing oil at the same time because we still aren't self-sufficient. They think that by the year 2020 that we will surpass Russia and Saudi Arabia as the leading producer of oil. But don't expect any to be left for your grandkids.